The 1940s is mostly remembered for World War II. During this time, many civilians were concerned with war and providing resources for it. The fear of socialist ideas and dictators caused many people to panic all over the world. While at war, Americans experienced music, new fashions, and life without men. This time period will all be remembered for a growing economy and the fearful hearts of many who are still scared by living through it.
In the 1940s, there were a lot of different styles of fashion and artists that were popular in this time period. The 40s was known for the skirts the women used to wear and the sport jackets the men dressed in. It was very popular for a teenage girl in the 40s to wear a sports sweater, knee-length skirt, and thick bobby socks. As for the older women in the 1940s, it was common for them to wear square shoulder dresses. Sport jackets were often worn with a solid color pant. As the years went by, the prints, textures, and vibrant colors became more popular.
In addition to fashion, there were artists like Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. Billie was an American jazz singer who went by the name Lady Day. She was born April 7, 1915 and passed July 17, 1959. Lady Day began her singing in Harlem, where she was spotted by a producer who recommended her to Brunswick Records, where she signed a recording contract. Throughout the 1940s, her music made people feel good, which made it very significant for this decade. However, in the late 1940s, she began to go down with legal troubles and drug abuse.
Ella Fitzgerald was also another jazz singer who was very successful in the 40s. One of Ella's most known songs was a remake to a nursery rhyme, A Tisket, a Tasket, that sold to over 1 million people, hit number 1, and stayed on the charts for 17 weeks.
On the ground she took it, my little yellow basket, and if she doesn't bring it back, I think that I will die.
Fitzgerald made history to be the first African-American woman to win a Grammy.
By the fall of 1942, numerous minor league baseball teams disbanded due to the war. The requirement for military leave hurt professional baseball. Men were drafted and had to go to the war. Philip K. Wrigley, the chewing gum mogul who acquired the Chicago Cubs Major League Baseball franchise from his father, feared that this would be a pattern and that baseball parks across the country would collapse. They wound up accompanying the possibility of girls softball league, based in the Midwestern United States. This league went on for 12 seasons, but in 1944 the league was sold to Arthur Meyerhoff, a Chicago advertising executive. Some of the first players were signed in 1943. Those who were signed were not able to have any other employment during the baseball season. Players were required to wear short skirts while playing in lipstick at all times. The league played softball in its first season, but over the years, rules changed and the softball league eventually became identical to men's baseball. In 1946, they became known as the All-American Girls Baseball League. This is how life for women began to change without men.
The fear of communism, otherwise called as the Red Scare, led to a national witch hunt for suspected communist supporters. The first ever Red Scare was around 1917 and finished around 1920. The second Red Scare along the time of World War II and was known as McCarthyism after its most famous supporter, Senator Joseph McCarthy. McCarthyism was the act of making accusations of subversive or treason without making legitimate regard of proof. Red has for quite some time been related with the communists and socialists, while white has been related with the conservatives. The Red Scare made numerous innocent people afraid to express their ideas since they worried about the possibility that they may be accused of being communists. People then got hysterical when the world began to face a time of heightened international pressure and rivalry known as the Cold War. Adolf Hitler was born in 1889. He was originally from Vienna, Austria, but he left there to fight in the German army. Vienna was known to be a hotbed of anti-Semitism, so he came keen to the idea of hating the Jews. Once the World War I was over and Germany was faced with punishments, they couldn't pay for the sanctions given to them, which added into Hitler's anger. He blamed the Jews for reparations of the Treaty of Versailles and believed they were the scapegoats for why it was proposed. He became a spy on the German Workers' Party and labor unions, but he ended up agreeing with their beliefs, which was that the Aryan race should rule. Those workers later became known as the Nazi Party, in which he eventually became president of. In 1923, the Nazi Party tried to overthrow the government, but the plan failed and Hitler was sent to jail. While he was in jail, he wrote a book that outlined his plans to purify the world's population. Once his book was advertised through propaganda, the party started to grow and a huge army called the Stormtroopers was created. The army became a threat to the government and other political parties, so the government appointed him to be the Chancellor of Germany to avoid conflicts. While in power, Hitler Hitler passed a law that made it illegal to believe in any other party other than the Nazi Party. He also killed all of his rivalries so that he wouldn't have any competition and he would rule by himself. With this power he had, he eventually took half of Europe under German control. While in control, he organized the Holocaust.
The second catastrophic massacre was the Holocaust, which caused the death of 11 million civilians. The attack caused a vast amount of anti-Semitism, which spread through Europe during the late 1930s. With such fear and hatred for the Jews, Hitler convinced German people to purify their race. Jews must be eliminated. In 1938, German civilians burned down and destroyed thousands of synagogues. This day will be called the Night of Broken Glass. The full effect of the Holocaust happens in 1941. Jews were being executed in their home, in their streets, and many were captured and thrown into concentration camps. Jewish people were shut out of German society, but not being able to attend school nor have jobs. Once at concentration camps, they were massacred and used as experiment guinea pigs to attempt to purify the German race. The most famous experiments were those of Dr. Mengele at Auschwitz, where he would sew people together and inject dye into eyes of children without any anesthetic. This massacre resulted in arguably the largest mass murder of one ethnicity throughout the entire history of the world.
Not only was Adolf Hitler a brutal leader, but a man by the name of Joseph Stalin was just as bad, if not worse. After getting expelled from a seminary, he joined up with the Bolshevik Revolutionaries, which was the group of people that strongly believed in communism and communist writings.
He became a leader and led riots, strikes, and he has various criminal records, such as bank robbery.
The Tsar's government was overthrown, and the Lenin and Bolsheviks took over. In 1924, Stalin became the sole leader of the Soviet Union. He is known as one of the most brutal leaders in world history because he killed, starved, and enslaved anyone who didn't agree with him. The estimate of people killed is between 20 to 40 million.
Another tragedy that took place in the 1940s was the Nanking Massacre, also known as the Rape of Nanking. This all started from an invasion by the Japanese on China that ended in the Chinese surrendering. The Japanese hated the fact that they surrendered, which made the Chinese coward to them. So in January 1938, Japan took control over Nanking and began to terrorize the people. Japanese soldiers raped 40,000 women, which included women from the ages of 9 to 80. They also slit the stomachs of pregnant women and beheaded the elderly. They made fathers rape their daughters, sons rape their mothers, and brothers rape their sisters. Furthermore, they went on to make the Chinese men dig graves and bury their friends alive. They set buildings and establishments on fire in hopes to murder the people in it. This attack ended in the death of over 500,000 people, scarring survivors for life. It's 1937 and Germany has just become allies with Japan and Italy. Germany begins to take Europe using blitzkrieg warfare. By 1940, Germany had overthrown Europe entirely except Britain and Spain. Hitler began to attack Great Britain and Russia using massive airstrikes. Using the rapid militarization of Germany, in 1941 they invaded Russia, breaking their non-aggression pact. On the other side of the world, the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor December 7, 1941. These actions caused the two opposing countries, the United States and Russia, to become allies. The bombing of the Pearl Harbor caused the U.S. to come out of neutrality and start to fight the Japanese in the Battle of Midway. This battle made it virtually impossible for the Japanese to win and assist Germany, which allowed the U.S. to focus on Germany. While all of that was going on, the Russians were fighting Germany. The main battle between them was the Battle of Stalingrad. Between the cold climate and the number of people, Germany loses the battle. More than 2 million lives were lost there, and over 1,000 tons of bombs were deployed. With gained attention from both Russia and the U.S., they met in a two-front war. With the force of the Allied powers, Germany is pinched back to its original land, causing Germany to surrender on May 4, 1945. As a result, Adolf Hitler committed suicide and shows the final straw of the German weakness. Japan surrenders August 14, 1945, ending World War II. The 40s was a decade that was very vital to the American and German cultures in many different ways.